This is for my vocabulary lesson. I did a first grade objective. I put the teacher will use sentence level context as a clue to the meaning of a word or phrase. Alright, for my review, I put the teacher will review vocabulary words from the last week. So I would hold up the book we had read the week previously, which could be This Is Not My Hat. And then I would ask, can anyone tell me one of the vocabulary words that from last week was? And then they could be like, the vocabulary word was stole. Alright, and then I'd ask them, can anyone tell me what that word means? And they'd give me anything like took something that wasn't theirs. And then I'd ask, can anyone use it in a sentence? And I'd be like, I stole Betsy's lollipop yesterday. And I'd use the whiteboard and the expo markers for that. It would be an oral review, and it would include the whole class. Alright, so the purpose of my lesson was to teach students how to use context clues to determine the meaning of a word. I put, yesterday I introduced you to your vocabulary words. The previous day I would give the vocabulary words out so the students can know what they look like. I put, today we will use clues from a story to find the meaning of our vocabulary words. I put, for future, I put, tomorrow we will continue to work with our vocabulary words, preparing us for our test. And then my objective is, the learner will use sentence level context as a clue to the meaning of a word or phrase. Right, for my motivation, I am going to read A Halloween Scare in Louisiana. This is all I would need for my motivation because I'm just kind of read it through, and then when we do our first activity, it'll kind of be brought back out to be used again. Prepare if you dare for a tale full of thrills. The time, Louisiana, gave everyone chills. A night filled with sights that are best left unseen. You ready? You sure? This is my Halloween. The werewolves howled loudly, the moon shined so bright. I stayed in my bedroom, the curtains shut tight. My heart started pounding, my knees felt so weak, but being a brave kid, I just had to peek. There he is, peeking out the window. I pulled back the curtains, my mouth opened wide. An army of monsters had gathered outside. They staggered and stumbled and lurched down the streets with bags full of cookies and candy corn treats. Emerging from sewers and houses and stores came creatures and critters with ravenous roars. Then more came along from all over the state. They filled up the streets at a dizzying rate. The big and the little, the tall and the small, from Shreveport and Houma, Westminster and Ball, all gathered together from one spooky night to seek out the living and give them a fright. The thunder clapped loudly with terrible booms. The witches dodged lightning and clung to their brooms. The two-headed doggy tried chasing their tails, and banshees let loose with their hideous wails. The vampires hung out on the streets in their gangs and grinned just to show off their pearly white fangs. A creature from sulfur came, causing a stink. He had too much sulfuric acid to drink. I got the wrong month, said the creature when sober, 'cause Mardi Gras happens in March, not October. A frog out of rain did his best to convince the ladies of Nola that he was a prince. They kissed him, and did a young prince take his place? Nope, he's just a frog with a smile on his face. The creepies were crawly, the crazies were crazed, the Lafayette zombies had eyes that were glazed. The ogres from Lake Charles were ugly as sin, with big bulging noses and warts on their chin. The ghouls danced around, but were lacking in soul. The gargoyles could rock, and the headless could roll. Although the whole spectacle seemed to spell doom, I foolishly thought I'd be safe in my room. But then something happened that made my heart jump. From somewhere below me, I heard a big thump. I froze for a moment, as quiet as a mouse. Yes, I could hear noises from inside the house. I put on my slippers and pulled on my robe. I shook like a leaf, but I didn't think it showed. Then slowly but surely I crept down the stairs, preparing myself for the biggest of scares. My hands trembled wildly. I opened the door. I still shudder now at the horrors I saw. The stereo spat out some hideous sounds as dozens of monsters jumped madly around. The sight was horrific. It made my skin crawl. These monsters were having their Halloween ball. And right in the middle, one monster loomed tall, the hairiest, scariest monster of all. And apparently he loves Louisiana. He turned round and saw me. I fell to my knees. I'm not very tasty, so don't eat me, please. He beamed ear to ear and broke free from the huddle, ran over and gave me a big monster cuddle. At last we have found you, he said with a smile. From Ruston to Gretna, we've looked for a while. We came here to give you your wonderful prize. He held up a trophy in front of his eyes. A prize, and for me, I replied with a grin. But what did I enter, and how did I win? You've won the first prize for the costume you're wearing. It even scares me, and I'm tip-top at scaring. This isn't a costume. I'm just as me. Exactly the scariest thing you can be. A small human child with a cute button nose. Your teeth are so shiny, you've only 10 toes. No hair on your face and no horns on your head. The whites of your eyes are not glowing or red. A bone-chilling costume, a horrible sight, a worthy symbol for Halloween's night. We partied together until the moon set, a Halloween night that I'll never forget. And next year I won't want to hide in my bed. The monsters won't scare me. I'll scare them instead. After I read the motivation to the class, I'll go ahead and pass out the keyword method worksheets. And then for me, I would need the whiteboard and the expo markers because the students are really just going to watch and kind of give me oral responses for this one until we get to them filling out their worksheet. I put the teacher will write the vocabulary words on the board while the students write the words on their pages. This way they're already on their pages when they start their work later. I then put the teacher will say the first word and ask the students what the word means. This would be before we go back to the book to look at the sentence, to use the context clues to figure it out. Just kind of see if they could remember or guess what they think the word would mean. So then I would take back out the book and reread the sentence it was in. So let's see, which one was it? This one right here. So it says, a frog out of rain did his best to convince the ladies of Nola that he was a prince. So I'd be like, after rereading our sentence, what do y'all think that the word convince means? And then they could give me their guesses, and then I would tell them the definition and write it on the board so they can see it as well. And then I would go through all our words like that. And then after that, I would ask them to draw or write their version of the definition of the word because this would be their worksheet. Of course, I forgot to turn it back the other way. But they would have the vocabulary words in this column, and then these could be a little bit bigger. And they could, draw somebody trying to convince somebody or something, or they could draw a little picture and put, a sentence saying Frank was trying to convince Sally to go play outside and stuff like that. Alright, and so they would need, that would be more of their written response. And then when they're done with that, they'd turn it into the classwork box. But they would need the worksheet, the crayons, and or pencil. Alright, so the next one I have is the teacher will model the game I have Who Has. This game will already be pre-cut and ready to go, so there's nothing to worry about. The teacher will have 2 cards to demonstrate. So these are just some I kind of made up for the story. I picked a couple words and threw them in here. There's a ton more I could have chosen. I think this book had a lot of words that could help first graders. So the first card would say the teacher would model. So the teacher would read the first card. I have the first card. Who has the word that means bad or terrible? So she would hold up this card. And then whoever had the terrible card would go, terrible. Who has the word that means showing courage? So then the student that had the word brave would then say it. After the teachers model this, she would pass out the cards, and there would be plenty for each student. And then you could even use the previous week's vocabulary words if you had more students than you had vocabulary words. That way every student gets to participate, and it's a good review for last week. And then the students would play the game until all the vocabulary words were gone. And then the last person who has the last card would have, so you get down to convince for this one on this page, and it says, who has the word that means deserving, honorable, great character. And then he'd go, worthy. And then I have the last card. And then you would know that the game is over. Right. For the closure, I put the teacher will review the vocabulary words discussed today. I would ask, can anyone tell me what the word terrible means? And then they could give their recollection, and I'd let a couple students say different stuff, and then I'd be like, yes, and then I would repeat the actual definition of the word. And then I'd go, what are some other words that mean terrible? So instead of the word terrible, what word could you use to put in a sentence saying, Betsy was acting terrible today. Her behavior was terrible, something like that. And then they'd go, oh, so you could put her behavior was horrible. And then I would ask, can anyone use the word terrible in a sentence? And I think I would probably ask that question before I would ask them to give me some other words that you could use instead of terrible. And then for the homework, I put the student will complete a crossword puzzle using the vocabulary words and a word search on the back. The crossword puzzle, you'd have to match the you'd have to read the definition and fill it in like that. And the word search is just a little something so they can recognize the words. For the early finishers, I put the students will complete a matching worksheet. The worksheet will have the definitions and the vocabulary words, and for that one I put they'd have to draw a line to it. I also made one where there was a word bank, and it's just like the 6 example words that I picked for the story. Again, there's so many more that you could use, but I put it in a word bank. That way they have to read the definitions and pick the word, and it's a little more than just drawing a line. They can actually write the word out. And then special needs, I put the student with a learning disability can work with a paraprofessional to match the vocabulary words to their definitions. The paraprofessional can also help them with having sentences with their words in it, so they can kind of guess the definition through the sentence around it. And then I put the student who is ELL will work one-on-one with the teacher to continuously practice matching the vocabulary words. But again, the teacher can also help her use her context clues to figure out the definition before fully letting her match them up on her own. For enrichment, I put the students will complete a fill-in-the-blank activity. So I'll have like a sentence on a piece of paper, and it'll have a blank where that one word's supposed to go. and they'll have to figure out which one of their vocabulary words go there out of the word bank that would be above it. And then that is it.